Hello, and welcome to this demonstration on dedicated egress IP addresses in Symantec's Web Protection Cloud SWG.
Hi, this is Nate Fitzgerald, and I'm here today to talk about a great new feature that we just released into private preview status called Dedicated Egress IP Addresses, or DEI for short. It may be a little self-explanatory, but I'll explain the feature just in case it's not and what value that it provides. So many of our customers have expressed a need to be able to put IP addresses dedicated to them in our cloud so that they can access business line applications that authenticate users not only with a username and password, but also by source IP address. And so the requirement is that the IP addresses used to access those applications be unique to that customer and that they live in our cloud. And so that's exactly what this feature delivers. So we allocate IP addresses to our customers in our data centers just for this use case. The feature is implemented in the connectivity tab. So if you have this provisioned in your account, if you're lucky enough to participate in the private preview, you'll have this. If not, unfortunately, this demo will have to suffice for now, but we'll get you access just as quickly as we can, and we think this will be out in the next couple of months. So stand by with this if you don't have private preview access. If you do have private preview access, you can certainly follow along and use this as a guide to get started. You'll click on the connectivity tab, then you'll access the new feature called Dedicated Egress IP Addresses, and you'll notice right away that there are two list configurations. One is for IP and subnet, and one is for destination domains. These are, of course, the third-party sites that you will access using your dedicated egress IPs. This allows you to specify what traffic goes through those dedicated IPs, and it keeps the bulk of your traffic on the shared IPs, which is nice for anonymization. So this really provides you the best of both worlds. The feature also does no backhauling to your infrastructure. It's entirely cloud native in our cloud. So there is no material latency increase by using this capability. There is no need to have a software connector living on your network to funnel traffic from our cloud back through IPs in your network. Our customers want a cloud-native solution because when they go to the cloud, they really want it to be the cloud, not something that relies on on-premises gear. And so that's what this feature delivers. To see the IP addresses that we've allocated to you, simply click on the Download Egress IP Addresses link in the upper right, and you'll get a JSON blob that just shows you the two IP addresses that we've allocated in each data center. And for the private preview, we're deployed in two sites, GGBLO, which is our London site, and GUSDM, which is code name for our Des Moines, Iowa, USA site. And you can see the IP addresses there. We'll keep this handy, and we'll refer back to it in just a second. And what we'll do now is set up a baseline to do our demo. And to do a quick baseline, I'm just going to use a third-party website. This one's called whatismypublicip.com, and it's a very simple website. It basically will just show us the IP address that it sees the request to the website coming from. And this IP address is part of the general pool of addresses that we operate out of our cloud. And so what we'll do, and these are shared across multiple tenants. So what I will do now is just configure the WSS agent to work with the private preview. This step will be unnecessary once we get into full production general availability. But for now, it is required just so that the agent is pointing at the DEI-enabled infrastructure in London or Des Moines. And here's my agent. And in order to provision the agent, I'll just go and enter this command, which I've already typed in for time sensitivity. And what that command does is simply tell the agent to go straight into the DEI infrastructure that has been provisioned in Des Moines for this tenant. Then I hit reconnect, and you can see that I'm overriding to the IP. So that's how easy it is to be able to utilize the private preview with WSS agent. All right, and so now what we'll do is we will provision what is my public IP to use the dedicated egress IP addresses for connectivity rather than the shared pool. So we'll take the domain and we'll paste it into a list. We'll say add the domain. And within a few seconds, our global cloud will see that new routing, and it will say anything that is destined to whatismypublicip.com needs to use the dedicated egress IPs rather than the shared IPs. So what I should be able to do now is just go back to this website. We'll do a quick refresh, and you can see that we are now using the dedicated IPs to this tenant in Des Moines. In fact, we're using the first one, 98.158.240.4. Now what we want to do is to just check and make sure that all the other traffic that the tenant generates is not using the dedicated IPs. The only site that should be using the dedicated IPs is that first one. So here's another one that does basically the same thing. It reveals your public IP. It has a little bit more functionality actually. And this one is not in our dedicated egress IP list, but it is also able to read your actual IP address if you're going through a proxy, which is the 174 address. That's my cable modem. And it's getting that from the headers. But it also reads the proxy address, which is 170.176. So in this case, that's a shared IP as well. So we know that this website is not going through the dedicated IPs. But if we wanted to send it through the dedicated IPs, just like the first one, we could easily do that and just add it to the list. We'll add the whole domain. And then in just a few seconds, this one will also be ready to go. So this one's already going through the dedicated IPs. This one is not. And we'll see if that has applied yet. And it has. So you can see here, we're coming from the dedicated IP. That's how quick and easy it is to convert a destination host from the shared IPs to the dedicated IPs. A fantastic feature with a really common use case across literally hundreds of our customers. So we're very happy to see this feature progress. It will be ready for full general availability in likely just a few months. In the meantime, enjoy the private preview. And if you're not able to participate, let's get together and do a demo and answer any detailed questions that you might have. Just reach out to your sales engineer for help getting that scheduled. Thanks, and have a great day.